The broadcast is now starting.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to the first PixelMill Webinar of 2019 and today's offering of modern versus classic, a SharePoint Battle Royale. Woo! We are so excited to have you guys here. If you haven't joined us before, welcome. We are so happy to have you. You're going to have some fun today. If this isn't your first time and you're coming back, hey, welcome back. We're happy to have you. Always good to have you back. We're going to have some fun today, guys. We've got some really great speakers, an amazing topic that is just a hot button issue right now. We're finding everybody's got something to say about it. So we're here to give you some pretty great information about it, and we've got some fun people to talk to you about it. A couple quick things, usual webinar stuff you're used to hearing. If you have questions or comments or anything, there are tabs for questions and chat. Feel free to throw your questions and stuff up there. I will be monitoring those, and you'll see me pop in and out to get those questions to you. If for some reason we don't get to them in the moment or during the actual session, we do leave time at the end for a Q&A, so we will get to your questions as best as possible, I promise. Without further ado, I will stop talking. Oh, by the way, I'm your host, Michael Wells, Partnerships and Community Manager here at PixelMill. I always forget to introduce myself, so there you go. So anyway, now that we're done with me, without further ado, let me introduce your speakers today. Fighting out of the red corner, all the way from Elk Grove, California, he is the Senior UI UX Designer, of PixelMill, Mr. Kunal Sharma. And fighting out of the blue corner, we've got Microsoft MVP and RD and PixelMill's very own President and Co-founder, Eric Overfield. Take it away, gents.
Sweet. Thank you, Michael. Gosh, I love that. Yeah, I'm really excited about this. This is a topic that almost every call I'm on nowadays, every client I'm talking to, every person I'm talking to at a conference, this is what they care about is what's this whole modern versus classic thing, and can we still go classic? Modern can't do it. What can we do? So I thought it was a great way to start the year. Real excited. So again, for those of you who I've not had the pleasure of meeting, my name is Eric Overfield, President, Co-founder here at PixelMill. I am a Microsoft Regional Director, dual MVP in the Office servers and apps and services space, and the Office developer space. They keep changing things on us. Been in this technology for a long time with SharePoint. I'm a huge fan of where SharePoint is going. I'm pretty much geeky. I totally understand that. Big dev person as well. You can always find me at Eric Overfield. Or ericoverfield.com, also still blogging at blog.pixelmill.com. And Kunal, who's joining me today?
Oh, well, thank you, Michael, for that awesome introduction. Well, my name is Kunal Varun Sharma. I'm a Senior UX Designer here at PixelMill. Been at this company for about 5 or so years, probably more, and been enjoying every bit of it. And Eric's kind of turned me over to the modern side, and I've been loving it since it's been out. Been totally immersing myself into it, understanding it, what's there in terms of UI, UX, just trying to make the best possible portals for my clients through modern. So,
yeah, sweet.
Yeah. All right.
So who we are here at PixelMill, again, for those of you who have not been introduced to us yet or haven't seen too much what we're doing, we're focusing heavily and helping our clients provide the solutions in those portals that are utilizing Office 365, SharePoint, Azure, and a lot more Microsoft Teams now. What we're looking to do are to help you build solutions that your users are actually going to adopt that are going to help deliver those communication and collaboration solutions. That's used to be something like, oh, it's a public-facing site on SharePoint. No, not anymore. So we're doing so much more. We're helping our clients really deliver some value. It's been a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to some of those Microsoft Teams integrations because I really think that Teams, SharePoint, Office, OneDrive with some Azure on the back end can provide some true value. So if you're ever looking for that kind of stuff, please do reach out to us. We're here to help you as well. Before we get started in the meet as well, I really expect a lot of questions on this one. And thank you for Joseph. I seen you already asking some questions. Excellent. Get those questions coming in. Yeah.
Let's go ahead and jump on this question, I think. Yeah, do you want to just go ahead and attack this one?
No, we'll get to these questions. So Joseph, I see it here. We're going to get this because we're going to be handling this kind of thing. But do get those questions into us. If they fit with the topic at that moment, we'll grab it. I will make sure that we reach out to them as all. I just sort of want to keep in the flow in interest in time and all that stuff. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started, Kunal. Set some ground rules for us here. Start getting us some definitions of what we're doing in an overview of today.
Sure. So as we all know, Microsoft is investing heavily in SharePoint as of late, and they've been working on a lot of updates over the past couple of years, starting since 2016, I believe. And this has been great for all SharePointers. I know that there was sort of a scare that SharePoint's going to go away, but ever since the updates, it's kind of on an incline. And these updates happening, there's sort of been this two different experiences created with modern and classic, and the biggest question is, what do we do now? Do we go modern? Do we use classic? And so today what we want to do is clarify some of the major differences between the experiences in modern and classic, present any trade-offs between the two, and just like Eric said, let's create a discussion and answer any questions you guys may have around modern and classic.
Yeah, yeah. And so I think if we start with some of the basics, we'll just make some basic definitions for you all, and then we'll get into a lot of the meat. So stick with us in the beginning if it's sort of a review as to what is classic, what is modern. We've got a lot of good hints and best practices and suggestions, and I have some pretty strong opinions here. I'll try to make my opinions well known, as well as to say, hey, here's where you might think that this might be different for you as well. So I'm going to try to be very fair as well. That being said, I am heavily invested in modern because I do think that's where a lot of people need to go. Yet classic is still a very valid solution for a lot of people. And I think this will be a great opportunity to really try to give you some clarity as to what's possible and what might be best for you.
Cool. So like Eric said, let's set some ground rules on definitions of what classic is and what modern is. And, you know, if you've been in the SharePoint world, probably familiar with the classic experience. These came out around late 2002, and ever since then, new features has been laid on top of that original foundation. And SharePoint 2013 is where they started making some bigger updates, and 2016 is when they moved towards modern on the bigger updates there. Eric, anything to add on the classic end? In terms of definition? No,
I mean, the classic, the way I look at it, is a SharePoint 2013 thing. We've seen, I mean, classic is an evolution really since 2001. The major changes with the ribbon and whatnot came in 2010 to 2013. When you're thinking classic, anything, what we mean on classic here is anything that's really the older SharePoint that's not using what we're calling modern, which we're going to fully define here in the next two slides.
So by modern, what we mean is the experiences that's been rolling out since 2016. These are not just the fresh look, the modern UI, but Microsoft has been building this from the ground up, making it accessible to mobile users, and it's been at the forefront for modern SharePoint to have these be mobile ready. And up until recently, modern SharePoint was available only through SharePoint Online Office 365. They've made it available on on-prem SharePoint 2019, and yep.
Yeah, so modern, it's those Microsoft 365 enabled, group enabled, or Office 365 groups, depending on which term you want, team sites and the communication sites with hub sites. That's what we're looking at. We're going to go into some more definitions here of modern shortly, but it's the modern experience found in SharePoint Online that made its way into SharePoint 2016 a little bit, and we now see in 2019 stronger, but not everything. There are some extra components that we're definitely going to get into as well on that aren't just the team sites or comp sites, but how you work with SharePoint as well. I generally think of modern as a SharePoint Online thing, though. So when I'm talking to clients, when I'm talking to people, that, okay, not true because SharePoint 2019 has it, but typically the SharePoint 2019 people need on-prem, and they're not necessarily thinking modern yet. They're just thinking, I need to be on-prem, and I want the latest version of SharePoint.
Cool. All right, so let's jump into one of the, kind of go through all the features that's out there and do a compare and contrast between classic and modern. So first of all, lists and libraries. At least from my perspective, and SharePoint is predominantly used for two main reasons over the years, and it's for your internet portals and document management. And one of the first places Microsoft looked to update was their lists and libraries. The core user experience of modern libraries works in parallel with OneDrive, and they made that very clear. So you have a seamless experience from going from your document libraries, and if you're using OneDrive, it's just the same consistent user experience. The ribbon from the classic experience is pretty much gone. They've gotten rid of some of the not most used items, such as the popularity trends, RSS feed, the most popular items. And a couple of features that I do like about the modern experience is the ability to pin documents, which I find super helpful. if you need to feature certain documents to your users, you can get them right at the top. And you do have only 3 to pin, but it's a super useful feature. And also the ability to download multiple files, whereas that wasn't available through the classic library at least. You could download each file separately. Here I can select multiple files and get a zip file ready for me to go.
Mm-hmm.
So at least from a UX perspective, the new updates that they're doing with the listen libraries, it's just a cleaner, easier to use documents library.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's a lot here, and this is where we start to get into some of the fun stuff. And Joseph, I'm going to hit one of your questions, and I'll repeat the question here in a second. The listen libraries was one of the first things that Microsoft took on as to update to the new experience, to a new modern experience, a new cleaner look. This did make it into SharePoint 2016 as well, just the modern view. So something big about this, that the modern listen libraries does not have complete feature parity with everything we had in Classic. There's a few things you really can't do yet in Modern, and it still isn't there. And when it first came out, Microsoft realized this, and they said, well, look, most of the stuff is there, so let's get most of you moved to Modern. But as a tenant administrator, you could go in and you could say, I don't want to make the Modern view available to anybody. So just announced that, well, not just announced, it was announced a little while ago, they're actually turning that off. So what I mean by that is they're not going to allow you to hide the Classic listen library experience from your users. They're going to, basically, they are pushing us there. And so Joseph asked a question, long-time listener, thank you for joining us again, that Microsoft recently announced that they're turning off the ability to force only Classic site collections at the tenant level. So it's not that they're taking things away per se. It's not that they're saying you can't use Classic anymore. It's they're no longer going to allow us to not have Modern in front of our users and listen libraries, site creation, etc. And so a good question, a good follow-up is then, so is Microsoft, are they truly committed to Classic? Are they actually going to make all this stuff available to us? My opinion on this whole thing is that when we say committed to Classic, they've been clear about their commitment being it's not been deprecated, and they will continue to watch the metrics, and as metrics show that Classic's no longer being used, they will then start to actually deprecate it and get rid of it. So they are going to support it, but they're making no new efforts in it, and they are going to do everything they can to push us along, and they're doing that now. So it's not that it's not going to be available. It's not that Classic isn't supported, but no new investments from Microsoft, and they're going to push us. We're seeing it in the listen libraries. They're basically saying, hey, users, you can't not show Modern, or hey, tenant admins, you can't show Modern. Good idea, bad idea? It's Microsoft product. They're going to do it. Something else that's kind of funny about Microsoft, they do track everything. They track who's using what, in particular, actually they're tracking what's being used. They use a whole bunch of telemetry to do that. And so they're monitoring this thing, and they're checking to see how things are being used. Now, I personally do believe that they're actually just watching what's being used. They're not caring about, they're not a Google, they're not an Apple, they're not a Facebook kind of thing where they're actually trying to use that to sell you stuff. But they are tracking that kind of information, and they're going to use that. And if they're still seeing usage of Classic, I do believe that they're going to continue to maintain it, not push it, not improve it, but they're going to continue to maintain the Classic experiences for us.
Hey, good question that came in, kind of what you were talking about.
Okay.
Our good friend Satish asked, how stable are Modern site features?
Good question that I'll answer kind of quickly here, and hopefully we'll get that throughout the rest of the webinar here. I found them to be very, stable in the sense that they're not, quote, breaking, but not stable in the sense that they're evolving quickly, which is a good thing. So we're going to talk about this in great detail over the rest, but I'll give you the nugget now, which is Microsoft in the Modern experience has provided very strong rails. They provided boxes that they want us to stay in. They've been clear that if you stay within those boxes, you should be safe and fine. And I have reasonable confidence in that. I don't have a problem telling my clients that when we're working with you and we're doing it this way, and Microsoft said do it this way, I don't think that I'm going to have to come back and fix any of that code anytime soon because Microsoft's going to break it. If you go outside the rails, if you paint outside the lines, like I like to do sometimes, very different answer. And if you expect it to never change, that's not true. Things are definitely changing, and that's a good thing. We're seeing Microsoft continue to evolve this. So Let me see if we answer that question in more detail throughout the session, because I do kind of want to keep moving forward. But man, I love these questions. They're coming in quickly. They're flooding in. Thank you all. I know it's a really important topic. So, Kunal, let's keep moving on, and we'll keep addressing these questions.
Sure. All right, let's moving on to team sites. So around May 2016, team sites rolled out alongside with the modern list and libraries. And team sites are meant to bring people together and collaborate for a specific purpose. One of the biggest differences that's between classic and modern is that modern team sites are connected to Office 365 groups, and they're very in tune with all of the Office suite products that's out there, Planner, Teams. So you get that right off the bat, and collaboration is made a lot easier through the modern ways. Also with Office 365 groups, the permissioning process is simplified. With the click of a button, you can share out your sites to people who you want, assign members and content admins and whatnot. Now, another difference is what you get out of the box is when you create a team site. With classic team site, you sort of get the web parts for news feed and documents, whereas on a modern team site, not just the interface, but you get the news web part, quick links, activity, and documents. So right off the bat, you're ready to go and start collaborating with your group. So super easy to get started on these team sites for modern.
Yeah. Okay, so let's look at the classic on team sites. Classic team sites, they've been around, they're still around. My opinion, don't create new stuff using classic team sites. There's just too many old issues with them, and there's really no good reason, in my opinion, to be using classic team sites. If you're if you're on SharePoint 2013, 2016, I get it, but assuming you're using more modern stuff, modern approaches, the classic team site experience just is not. You should be using that for team communication collaboration, for creating a team, not for creating a large site or a big portal or anything. And I know people were doing that before, mainly as a hack. I don't like that in general. You'll always give me a use. Someone can give me a use case where I'm wrong. I get that. I'm trying to hit the 95, 99, 99.9%. So classic, okay, I don't like it. And we can even say, well, Microsoft still has some of that as default. Yeah, I know. It's not a good thing. Modern team sites, great opportunities here for us. The fact that they're responsive out of the box, they're connected to those Office 365 groups, or keep hearing Microsoft 365 groups, we'll see. I think there's a lot of power there, and they provide that great spot for you to create your team-based communication collaboration. It definitely, when combined with something like Microsoft Teams, where you've got your integrated chat, your integrated communication for a team environment. But I would keep it at that, because the limitations of team sites and modern team sites still are pretty great for creating anything outside of something that a team would in fact use.
All right. Let's jump into publishing and communication sites.
This is a big one.
And just like I said before, your internet portal is ways to get information out to your clients, and publishing sites and communication sites has been at the center of it. And this is typically what you use to build those informational sites out. One of the biggest differences between these two, and similar to team sites on the classic and modern, and is publishing sites are a little bit more structured than communication sites. But comm sites does, I'll abbreviate communication sites, since that's sort of what we've been used to doing, is calling communication sites comm sites. But comm site does provide a way to create engaging and mobile-ready pages with just the click of a button. If you know what the SharePoint homepage is, you click on that create a site, click communication, there's a drop-down of certain site designs. You can choose between topics, a blank, and one that I'm blanking on right now, and you get started right away. You have certain web parts right there. Whereas on the classic side of things, as you look at the screenshot right there, you have to do a lot of work to get content on there. You get a blank slate essentially, and just from an end user perspective, you want to get these sites up and running quickly for your employees and get information out quickly. Though I do like the fact that classic does offer you to control a lot more of the interface. Being a graphic designer, I like to do that, create custom UI and totally get control of what I can do and manipulate some of that, and that's something that I do like about Classic. But with Modern, we are limited to branding to colors only. I know my first Ignite that I went to, they did announce that they're going to do typography, but that's yet to be released. I'm not sure where it's on the roadmap. But once again, if you're looking to get started quickly, Modern communication sites is the way to go, and they're mobile right out the box and responsive.
This is a big topic. This one right here, publishing communication sites, because let's face it, a lot of times we're using SharePoint to create larger portals or communication platforms. Classic SharePoint, traditional SharePoint, we would use a publishing site for that, for the great reasons that Kunal talked about, things as well as having where we had a custom master page, we had page layouts, we could create a railed experience for our end users that provided a really cool custom interface. Yet our users were less prone to hurt themselves because we were able to create a better experience for them, a tailored experience for them, so that they could create the pages and contents that they needed to create those big portals and whatnot. All right, so Modern, what are we supposed to do? The best answer I can come up with is communication sites, comm sites as well as what a lot of us call them. So comm sites are destined, in my opinion, to replace publishing. That being said, there will never be a true feature parity replacement for publishing sites to comm sites. There's always going to be a little difference. One of the big ones will be the level of customization, full control customization that we are going to be given for comm sites. Never say never, but I don't expect to see Microsoft ever giving us back something like a master page, which we're going to go over shortly here as well. But we're never going to get full control of the overall experience for a comm site. Now, maybe if we're lucky, we will get more control of the canvas or something so that we can control more of the content. But if you take the comm site component, the fact that we'll ever get full control of that, no. But I do believe we're going to get more and more features. So my opinion, if you're looking to create a new portal, and that's what you wanted to maybe use a publishing site for, if you want to do it 100% modern, you're probably, I think you're going to start with a communication site. One of the templates is called a blank one. It's a blank communication site. And it gives you that ability to just start adding in your content where you've got sections and rows and columns, and you can start to put lots of components, a lot of out-of-the-box components or custom components. You can use something we'll talk about soon, SharePoint Framework extensions, to control more aspects. But as Kunal's talking about on some of the branding, we're going to be a little more limited on the kind of things that you might be able to do. So you might want to start to rethink the level of customization that you're going to want or require for your portal. Now, we've got lots of good answers for you, because I'm hopefully a lot of you are like, wait, but I can't do this. Yes, we'll get to it shortly as well. So the big answer here, the big summation is that communication sites and classic publishing are supposed to sort of be the replacements for each other, or comm sites replacements for publishing. I'm very well aware that some features are missing. One of the big ones I really want to see is page layouts actually come out. They've been announced, they've been released, they're being rolled out. I want to see them fully baked into the product for everybody in general availability, with the ability to really define them like we had in publishing sites. I haven't seen it to the level I'm looking for, but we are expecting pretty good page layout feature sets coming to comm sites really, really soon. So much material to get through. I love it. I love the questions, by the way, everybody. There's a little too much, but I love it. So Michael and I are going to keep going through this.
I'm keeping track of them. Don't worry. Yes, keep these questions coming. They are phenomenal.
They are great questions. Okay, Kunal. Oh, did we lose your voice?
Oh, Kunal.
Sorry, I was double muted.
There we go.
I apologize.
Yep.
I have this cough that's been running for a weekend. I try to mute myself, and I realized I muted on the wrong end. So content and page editing. That's probably one of the features that I love the most about the modern updates. It's how easy it is to get content and web parts onto your pages. Essentially, it's 2 clicks. You click on edit page. You click on that blue plus button or whatever color it's chosen for your theme, and then you just get started right away. Just super fast, super easy. Whereas on the classic end, you had to go through a couple clicks to get to the web parts, and when I had actually first started working with SharePoint, it took a little bit for me to understand how editing a page worked. So I had to do a little bit of training and understand how to get a web part on a page, how to structure the page layout, and things like that. The Modern, when it first rolled out, it was very intuitive. It almost rivals some of the other CMSs out there, and on how easy it is to just get started on creating a page.
Mm-hmm. I love the editing experience in Modern for sure. It's gotten so much better out of the box, and we needed it. I mean, the classic SharePoint editing experience was an older, gosh, we're talking 6-7-year-old editing experience, and the web evolved, and we found lots of new ways to provide editing. And I do like the feature set that that Modern is able to give in the editing experience. There are some questions that I want to hit up while we're here. There's some comment came in around some of the web parts that are available in Classic and aren't available in Modern yet. And this was really regarding the previous slides around team sites and publishing sites. So I want to hit this one before we move on, Kunal. Okay, so there's some definite web parts that are missing in Modern that we had in Classic. In particular, Sandra pulled up some ideas around discussion boards, issues and tasks. Okay, so my opinion on those, I don't have anything to really share on if we're going to get those web parts built for us out of the box in Modern. What I can say is those types of features are Microsoft, in my opinion here, they're pushing us to certain technologies where they would then provide a component to get into that. So not the best examples here, but for discussion boards, issues, and tasks, they're looking at things like Teams and Yammer and pointing off and using a Yammer web part to integrate into that. Discussions would be pointing off into Teams for Microsoft Teams for team sites. Not that you really embed that yet, but maybe that'd come sometime soon. That'd be kind of nice. Tasks would be Planner and Planner web part. There's also, and we don't really have a link section here, but if you Google quickly the P&P, the SharePoint Starter Kit. The SharePoint Starter Kit is a great tool for more devs, but definitely IT pros and some power users will be able to install something like that. And there are some open source web parts that might start to provide some of the functionality that you're looking for around maybe issues and tasks, not discussion boards though. So when you're looking at migrating from Classic to Modern and you've got thousands of sites you need to migrate and you've got licensing issues and whatnot, it might be a challenge to find the right component. You might have to broaden your thinking on how you did it in the past. The feature that used to be just in SharePoint, Microsoft's looking to remove it so that SharePoint is not the monolith that has everything. Rather, it does its thing really, really well, content management and whatnot, and provides you a good editing experience. But specific features, and we're going to get to some other features here shortly, where they've fully removed the feature from SharePoint, and instead they're looking to have a larger service that hooks into SharePoint. Now, related to ease of content, now that's different. I mean, they're going to continue to give us an editing experience directly within SharePoint, and I do expect that to improve, and I expect it to continue to get better and new features to keep rolling out. Even in the last year, the editing environment has gotten, I think, a lot better in Modern. Back to a question we had before around stability of Modern. One way I could interpret that question is how much does it not change? This is one of those examples where your editing experience evolves really well. And I suppose for content authors who are not willing to accept the change, it can be jarring because they would go to edit a page and they find they've got new good options. My answer is tough. This is the world we live in, and it's the benefit of the cloud. It's the curse of the cloud that we've got all of these new things that are coming, and it requires us to stay on our toes a little more. And I also get large organizations have training materials and processes where it can be a challenge. I understand. Another way I can look at it is the funds that you're saving on not having to maintain your own SharePoint infrastructure when you move to the cloud, when you're moving to more modern. That money is not just going to disappear. It might have to go, some of those resources would have to go into resources to help maintain the system for your environment. I still think you'll see significant savings overall, but you're going to get more value for your end users. You just might need to put in a few more hours a week to help maintain the system for you, but you're still saving many IT pro-ish hours, shall we say, in just maintaining the system. Totally off topic on content, so keep the questions coming. I'm going to keep trying to pepper the answers into this conversation.
Cool. I did see a comment around the big top banner and if it's a really bad design. I do agree with that, and Microsoft has tried to fix that with the header updates that they're trying to roll out soon. And yeah, I know internally at least we've had that discussion a lot where that banner at the very top is just too much height there. And
yep. We have almost a slide dedicated to this one later. I've got a lot to say on this too. I will answer it myself in a bit though.
All right, let's move on to search. And to be honest, I feel like search is probably one of the features that just about every single one of our clients that come to us, they want to improve, and it's part of that navigation that people use to get to information quicker. And it's important to kind of look at the two types of searches that is out there. From what I've been reading, Desmond talks about using both together in some ways because there's differences to how search is rolled up. So on the classic experience, I believe this is also known as Search Center. That provides results from the search index, and what that lends to is we can control and manipulate what search results you see on your results page. And we can customize the user interface through display templates and enhance the overall experience, defining what results the users are seeing, and also using query rules to promote certain results. Whereas on the modern side, this is based around Microsoft Graph. And so you logging in as, let's say, Kunal, you're going to be seeing results that's personal to you because of how you're interacting with the sites within your SharePoint environment. So it's going to get you relevant results right off the bat. So if you interact with a certain document and you're trying to search for it, it may come up to the very top. And as well as if you're looking at the screenshot here, if you get into the modern SharePoint search bar and you start typing, it'll show you certain results and quick results right on the panel. And these are results that's tied to you.
Search. My opinion on this whole thing is, and we're going to talk about hybrid here later. It's kind of one of the other big things we need to talk about. Modern search is really cool. It's far better. And I'm really excited to see the promises of Microsoft Search, which is a very large initiative within Microsoft. They've got a lot of funding, which is great. And they're looking to provide a large overall encompassing search experience that searches everything, not just you, not just your environment, but everything all into one. Pretty cool. I got to stay away from some of that. Let's just stick with modern SharePoint search. It's powerful, it's better, it's a nicer interface, it's clean. As Kunal said, it provides more targeted results to you that's not just SharePoint driven, that has a little more oomph to it. The type ahead's better, it's better interface, that's great. Big problem, that's what you get. So there's really zero customization you can do to that. There's nothing you can do to make it fit within yourself. It's not at this time allowing you to really have your own content types, your own refiners, your own way to modify and change it. So this is a great example where hybrid might be needed, where you need to create a search experience that is targeted for SharePoint. You've got a portal, you need to provide results that you can customize and you can change the page around. This is where you might go back to having a SharePoint classic publishing site that really has nothing but a search center component to it, so that you can have search results and you can send components to it. You're using old school display templates to do that. Yeah, because you get the control then. You can now send specific queries. You can get certain data out of SharePoint. You can have result types and custom refiners, and you can really control that search experience. Now, there is a way to do this in modern as well, sort of. We're going to talk about an extensibility model, which is the SharePoint framework. There is an open source search component that was built by a couple of very talented developers. This one's a little harder to find. I'd have to get a link for you, and I'll try to get it in the show notes later. It's over in the SharePoint PnP community over at GitHub. The big things to think about, though, is that there is there is someone built, two guys in particular, they built a search result component for modern SharePoint that acts very much like the classic SharePoint search web part. So that's pretty cool. Open source, you can download it for free, you can use it, you can customize it, you can tweak it. I've used it myself, I've customized it myself. It works really, really well. Okay, there was there's a couple other questions here I wanted to get at that are sort of related, sort of not related. There was one about audience targeting, which to me it still has a search component to it, but audience targeting in this case would be more if I land on the homepage of a portal, let's say, I would like to see specific content that would appear for certain people based on audience, based on some sort of permissions group, user profile settings, something like that. Classic SharePoint had audience targeting. We could create web parts and customize them easily out of the box so that that web part would only appear for someone who's in a certain group, let's say. Modern SharePoint doesn't have that yet, but it's been announced, it's coming real soon. As of now, my understanding is what I've heard announced, publicly announced, is that there are going to be a couple web parts that will have it. So it'll be more on a web part to web part basis. They're not having it for every single out of the box web part, good or bad. That's the way it goes. And so they're going to be providing some targeting in out-of-the-box features. The other answer, of course, is you might not like it, but it's to build custom components yourself that provides the audience targeting that you want. Your customizations could look at the user, the current context of the person, and would then decide should I show something or not, depending upon who the person is. Same thing that you can do with search. You could build search component web parts basically using this open source project that I was mentioning, and you could tweak it so that it provided a custom interface to a certain kind of data that would in itself be audience targeted because search did in fact refine things. Another question here, and I know I'm peppering some of these questions here. There was, I think it was Emmett had commented that one of their developers had created basically a full page web part that was able to take control of the screen. Yep, totally agree. You can definitely do that. So the idea here is think about it creating a communication site. We'll talk about the header shortly with branding in a second. And you would basically have one section with one row with one big web part zone, and you would put your web part in that, and you would effectively have near a full page web part that you now could do anything. You could have your own columns and rows and sections and components and pull things together and absolutely true. Yeah, you can definitely do that. It's not quite the same thing as a publishing site, but there are ways around the limitations of modern so that you still get a lot of the way there. I would argue, you just need to rethink the way that you are looking at how your solution will need to get built. Modern is departing enough from classic that you might have to just really think outside the box, sort of make some changes. All right, let's keep moving forward, Kunal.
Brandings. As a graphic designer, I think this is where I sort of shine. I love designing. I love creating custom UI and just kind of having control of everything there. And what you see on the left is not an out-of-the-box classic site, but this is fully branded to our clients' needs. And what I like here is that we've gotten designs done based on the company's brand and try to kind of get the company culture out there. And that's sort of what I like about classic, is the ability to do that. Mm-hmm. Though on the modern end, I've said this before, and how you get pages done quickly is probably a good benefit. And we are tied down to 3 colors in terms of theming. Microsoft's looking into ways of adding a little bit more visual elements, visual triggers to kind of get onto your page. They just released the section background colors, which provides a good break on your page. And yeah, they're just looking for ways to keep on improving the header. They've worked on simplifying it, like sort of mentioned before, and it hasn't been rolled out yet, but they're working on these updates. So from the branding perspective, I do like getting started and creating designs out of the bat and making something custom, but knowing that sometimes our users and our clients, they want to get a site up quickly, and modern's definitely the way to go there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. There's a lot we can do here. Question came in about possible yet to define custom theme. Yes, so there is custom theming available within modern SharePoint. You install a custom theme, you create a custom theme using PowerShell. It works. You have few control of colors. It's not nearly like the classic theming that we had where you could change a lot of things. There's really only a couple of major buckets that you could change: background color, content color, a few highlights and whatnot. So theming is definitely there. Good way to find that, just if you type in, do Google search SharePoint Online themes, SharePoint Online modern themes, something like that will find you probably some good results on it. I know I did a webinar on this probably about a year ago or so. So in our archive, where we would have some information on theming and I believe UI Fabric at the time. So you can definitely use the railed experience that Microsoft's provided for theming to help make some changes. Other components about branding, I'm going to talk about this now. I'll bring it up again later, I'm sure, which is the header. Yes, everybody I talk to wants to change the header. Microsoft showed at, I believe this was at Ignite, they showed the ability that they're adding soon to be able to create different sizes of headers. So they're going to create a compact view header. And I have not seen it come out in the wild yet that we actually can do this yet, where we can select the header we want. But it's not that you can get any header you want. It's you would select from different types of views they've provided. This is sort of a problem for me because I really want to change some of the elements that are in a header. I would love to have some sort of zone that I could target to change maybe the search experience. The search box, let's say, is a pretty common one. Maybe I want to add my own icons. I'd like zones that I could change things in the header. Not available right now out of the box. Yeah, I think it's kind of funny. Something that I really highly recommend you look at if you haven't seen. It's something called the SharePoint Lookbook. Microsoft created it, aka.ms/SharePoint Lookbook, all one word. Microsoft worked with some of their internal designers, and they created a whole bunch of communication sites. I think team sites, maybe communication sites. They're looking at what's possible with modern to create beautiful interfaces. And one of the things I thought was kind of interesting, a lot of the headers they were showing was this new compact header. I think they know that their header is a little too big out of the box. I'm gonna start painting outside the rails, painting outside the lines right now. Through customization models, you can start to tweak the header in a very unsafe way. So stick around for a few more minutes. I'm going to get into that in heavy details and huge caveats. You are swimming outside the lanes. Be very careful. There might be sharks out there that are going to bite your foot off. So you can do it. I've seen it. I've done it. I've seen clients do it before I was involved. I've seen clients do it that did it on my recommendations. I believe that there's good reasons why you would do it, with some major caveats on, are you sure you're ready for this kind of change to occur? Oh, another question before we move on that I saw. There's a question about, can I talk about web parts talking to each other? So custom web parts has something called dynamic data. It allows you to build a web part that can communicate with another web part. It's a whole development model to do that. It supposedly works well. I tried it once particular for a client, and I found that it didn't work well enough for me, that the message that went from one web part to the other was not consistent enough. That's not a good example, though. I mean, you don't want to try this for yourself. It's called dynamic data, though. If you would like to see this actually work within a web part, that project I talked about, the custom search results, is actually two pieces to that. There's a search results web part and a search box web part that are designed to be able to talk to each other using this dynamic data model. So if you want to see it, that's definitely a great way to look at it. And we'll try to get it out in the show notes if you can't find it, or ping me as well saying, hey, what was that? And I'll try to get you the link. It's not hard. It's just I always forget it. It's github.com/SharePoint/SP-dev-fx-webparts. I think I might have gotten that wrong. So yeah, some pretty cool stuff. All right, Kunal, let's move on to the next piece of branding that I love so much. Yes, all right. So site templating. So something about that is very important for a lot of the clients that we work with is being able to consistently create new sites and be able to, when you create a new site, you want your end users to have a consistent experience, that they get a branded site, that a new site with new pages and stuff like that. And In Classic, we had site templates. These were typically built in Visual Studio. They were put together in a WSP. Typically, not always. You could still save a site as a site template, but you could do this for team sites, publishing sites as well, so that when you created a new site, it automatically had a certain structure to it. I could go on for 10, 20 minutes on some of the issues with this. It's old. We don't want to work with that anymore. Moving forward, modern sites, they have something called site designs. This is fully modern, so this is not available in 2016 even. This is I don't even think this is available in 2019. There's some big limitations in 2019 that I've seen, and I'm pretty sure site designs is one. In SharePoint Online, though, you can create a tailored new site experience, not when you create a new site, but as the site's getting created. That's using something called site designs with site scripts. And we did a whole webinar on this topic. It is an hour-long topic, but it allows you to define a type of site that would get created using the new methodology of Microsoft, which is that they give you the shell, and then you take that and you put customizations on top of that somehow. So in modern SharePoint and general modern experiences, that would typically be something like client-side rendering, where the browser is taking the data Microsoft provides and creating a beautiful interface in the browser. For site templating, what that means is you would create a site design that would apply to a team site, a modern team site, or a communication site. So you get that shell communication site, let's say, and then your customizations will get applied in order of the customizations you want on top of that communication site. So as communication sites continue to evolve, your customizations will always get that new communication site experience, and you will evolve with that, which is pretty cool stuff. There are some limitations for sure. Site designs are only so powerful. Those can be extended though with Azure. These are not really, this is not a power user, end user thing in my opinion. You are going to need to be working with developers who understand the core of how SharePoint's put together, in my opinion, when you create site designs. You can create pretty basic ones yourself, but we're using JSON, we're using some interesting technology using PowerShell. It just can take a little bit of time to put all this together. Let's keep going, Kunal. So much more. Gosh, the questions are great. So much to deal with. I love it. If we don't get to all your questions, I think we're going to have a really massive write-up that we're going to publish later this week or early next week, where I'll try to answer all of your questions with Kunal. Okay. Something else really big that we had in Classic was that we had sort of a known structure on how to create hierarchies of sites. Typically, we'd create a site collection because we would have our tenant administrator go and create a site collection for us, because that's how we had to do it. And then we would create pages and subsites and subsites and subsites, and we were able to create a portal based on that. Yeah, that doesn't work very well. There were some visionaries in Microsoft or out in the community years ago that realized this is a problem. And the major problem is when you create, say, a portal experience and you start creating subsites and subsites. If any of you have ever tried to migrate a subsite, fun, huh? Not the easiest thing to do. Or even better yet, what if you had a primary site, a subsite, and a subsite, and you needed to remove that middle layer subsite, and you wanted the other subsites to kind of make their way up? Can't do it, not easily at least. So Microsoft realized that organizations change, they move, things need to move around. You don't always get the structure right at the initial go of it. And so they've created a new grouping structure called hub sites that allow us to group site collections together into larger groups. Pretty cool stuff. This is a newer feature. It's not been out all that long, but months and months, quarters and quarters. There's some great documentations on how to help set this up. There's some big limitations to think about though, as of today. And I don't know if this is going to change, but as of today, a site can only join one hub. So you can't be joining multiple hubs. The second thing is a hub cannot join another hub. So really this is sort of one layer of grouping. It would probably not be a good idea to create a hub site for your primary portal. So if you're going to have a portal, you wouldn't want that to be a hub, because all of the subsites of that, all the site collections that were a member of that hub could not then be a member of another hub. Probably not what you're looking for, because you'll probably have a hub for something like marketing, for your IT department, for senior leadership, HR, etc. They would have their hubs to help pull all their information together. A lot of cool things you can do with hub sites. They have shared navigation, they have shared theming, related to the site designs we talked about before. When you create a hub site, you can associate it with a site design, anytime a site then joins that hub, that site would also get that site design applied to it, which is kind of cool. So you can apply extra things. Maybe you want certain content types or lists of libraries to be created. Maybe you would like a deeper process that was handled over in Azure to be executed on any site that joins a particular hub to have something happen. You can do all of that today. Not out of the box per se. You need someone to build those processes for you, but the hooks are all there by Microsoft. There's another thing, though. I said, that we needed this because we used to use subsites. This is not to say that subsites are evil or bad. There's still plenty of use cases and reasons why you're going to create subsites. The phrase that I heard Microsoft coin, which is kind of cool, I think it's kind of cute at least, it's geeky, and considering the guy that I heard say it for the first time, it fits. It's hub before you sub. So the idea is look to create a hub of sites before you start creating sub-sites of a site collection when you're trying to create a group of things. This actually goes back to, well, it doesn't go back to, we haven't talked about it yet. There's another thing that I hear a lot, which is never create folders in libraries. That's not true. There's use cases where folders are good. I would caveat that by saying subfolders within subfolders is a very bad thing. But there's reasons why you might need to classify content within a specific library by using folders. So off topic of the hub sites, but there you go. Kunal, I know you've been doing a lot of work with hub sites as well. Any thoughts that you have there?
I think you covered majority of it. One of the things that I've been sort of, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, man.
Okay. Eric might have lost me, but in terms of just hub sites in general, one of the challenging aspects is the navigation area, at least, and how do we tie that into your global scheme of things. And so this is where sort of SPFX header comes into place. And if you're looking for a global header, look to ways on getting that connected.
We lost either me or we lost Kunal.
I can still hear Kunal. Are you not able to hear him, Eric? Eric, can you hear anybody?
Yeah.
All right. Well, we seem to have lost Eric's ability to hear anything. Strange. Kunal, keep going, and we'll hopefully get Eric back in this soon.
Sure. Well, actually, this is a little bit on Eric's forte on getting forms and workflows out there at InfoPaths. At least I can start it off on the modern end of it. Can you hear us, Eric?
I'm not able to hear Kunal. Might just be my machine is bad. But I hear people can hear me, which is good.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. I think I just lost my audio. I can't hear anybody else.
Okay. We'll
so I'm going to go ahead and
yeah.
Speaking over you, Kunal, I do apologize. I will try to get. I'll probably jump back out and jump back in. But I do want to hit this next thing, which is how we interact with external content. And so this relates to a previous question that we had around other web parts, such as like discussion forums and whatnot. And I said we'd come back to this. So in classic SharePoint, we really had integrated workflows, and then we had forms that we could create as well in SharePoint Designer. And that was then extended with InfoPath, and a lot of us loved InfoPath, did a really great thing. The catch with InfoPath was, well, the catch with, it is now, Microsoft deprecated it, and that was a really big deal in SBC 2013 or 14, I think it was. There was a whole funeral for InfoPath and stuff. The fact is InfoPath is still alive and well, still being used. It's been deprecated, but it has a very extended lifespan. I think it's up for another 5 or so years, 2022, 2024, something like that. A lot of users using it. That being said, if you're on-prem, I get what you might be using it. I hope you don't use it moving forward. But Microsoft looked at this and said, this is not the right solution. We need to build something better. And so they went ahead and built external features that hook into SharePoint for sure, but can do so much more. And a lot of us have heard about these things like Power Apps and Flow. So for forms, for creating really good forms, we have Power Apps that allows us to create forms within the browser. We can then take those forms, they're already mobile responsive, ready. You can embed that Power App within a modern page. You can embed that Power App somewhere else, as well as use that Power App on its own. Pretty cool. And you could load it on a mobile device as well. So very sophisticated. So today's January 24th, 2019. So those of you who are listening to the recording, now you have a date. Every week, Microsoft runs a community call, SharePoint PnP, and during a demo today for the community call, Chris Kent, one of the strongest SharePoint Framework developers I know, he created a Power App that was actually a game for his children. You can do all kinds of stuff with Power App, pretty cool stuff. Now for workflows, the idea there was to be able to create some sort of process in place, and the big answer we have there for end users is flow. So we've got these other components that are outside of SharePoint that we can use to create the experiences we were looking for, and this is where you really need to change your thinking potentially. That used to have InfoPath, you used to have these embedded things that only worked in SharePoint. That's not the point of the cloud. The cloud is to take lots of components, bring them all together, and have them do their thing, but they can also execute on their own just as well. And I think this is a good thing. I do. I think Power Apps and the power that you can have there, you can take a device, you can take a form that you build, run it on your mobile device that could then talk to and communicate with SharePoint, and it can add data to a SharePoint list just like before. And then you could have a flow triggered, so anytime that SharePoint list has a new list item added to it, maybe you want a new site created through a special provisioning process. Maybe you've got a new report that came in off the field and it has pictures associated with it. Your Power App can capture that data, can put it into a SharePoint list, and now that flow can see that and start to go for approvals or get people to review what's going on, or it could send the content off to different people dependent upon different logic and whatnot. So some pretty cool stuff that you can do with Flow and with Power Apps. It's just a different way of thinking. Kunal, I'm going to let you speak for a second. I'm going to jump back. I'm going to jump out of the webinar. I'm going to jump back in to see if I can get my audio corrected here.
All right, if you could hear me. Well, this is a slide that Eric sort of shines on. It's sort of his geek time.
I'm back. Can you hear me?
There we go.
And I can hear Kunal. Yes, sweet. Yes. Okay. I built this slide because I love this one. Okay. I'm just going to cut you off, Kunal, because I obviously geeking out too much here.
That's all yours.
I'm going to keep my my camera off for now. Maybe that was it. I don't know. As soon as I turned it off, everything came back. Okay, customization, big. All of us want to customize what Microsoft has provided for us in SharePoint. Very quickly in Classic, we had the models that we could use for customizing would be something like custom master pages that would allow us to change the shell of a SharePoint page. We also had page layouts, which we could then use in publishing sites in order to create a defined structure when anytime you created maybe a new news article page or a new senior leadership article page, etc. You could also embed JavaScript and custom CSS directly into pages and take full control of things. You could bundle all this up into solutions using Visual Studio. You would create full trust solutions that got installed into the tenant, actually into the central administration. You could build sandbox solutions. All of that stuff, besides sandbox solutions to a small degree, is all classic, all old, all not cloud friendly. So Microsoft needed a new model that made more sense and provided a much stronger system for us. I think they did a very good job in where it is. It was a little bit of a rocky start, but they've gotten much better, and the ability we have is pretty solid now. The primary customization model that we have, well, we've lost custom master pages and they're not coming back. So you're not going to get that kind of full control anymore. That's the way it goes. Okay, so what you can, the major customization model that we have is the SharePoint framework. Full session on that. In fact, you can do full day workshops on SharePoint framework. SharePoint framework in and of itself, though, it's a customization model that allows you to build custom web parts and something called extensions that allow you to manipulate lists and libraries, as well as add custom headers and footers to your page that you can then package up into a SKPKG, a file. You install that into your app catalog using the browser at all times here, so you don't have to get into any deep code or you don't have to get into any deep parts of SharePoint, shall we say, but this is a developer task. You're going to need a developer team to really help you with this kind of stuff. Once you install this, you can then add these web parts to pages, and you can set extensions to work with different webs and whatnot. Now, when this was first released, basically anytime you added a web part in an app, it was available throughout your tenant. We're starting to see a lot of granular control so that you can decide what sites would be allowed to see web parts. And I expect a lot of things to change. I expect a better editing experience, a better administration experience to continue to evolve over the next multiple years that the framework is going to be out. We used to hear questions of, oh, do we really want a new extensibility framework? Because the SharePoint framework is really the fourth new model that Microsoft provided. I find that those conversations are not happening much anymore, which is good. The SharePoint framework is what Microsoft is in fact using today to build SharePoint itself, the front end interface of SharePoint. That's a good thing. It means they're not going to change it anytime soon because they have to rebuild their whole product. I think the SharePoint framework has a very long lifespan. This does provide this through a railed experience, though. We've lost control of everything, and that's just the way it goes. The primary method, the language that you're going to be using, the developer language, is TypeScript. So we've really done away with JavaScript. We've done away with CSS, and we've moved into Sass, which is kind of like CSS, same idea. If you need to build deep external processes, if you need to do things that you wouldn't want to do in a browser, you want it to be able to integrate with external services and work in secure manners. The methodology here is to use Azure or some other external service, and the SharePoint framework already includes 3 different primary techniques you can use to go and communicate with those other external services securely and safely. And then, of course, there's the site designs that we talked about for provisioning all of this stuff out. So the customization methodologies available to us are strong, and they are evolving in a good way. So I really expect to see some great things come out. And nowadays, with the community that's available through the Microsoft or SharePoint P&P or SharePoint Patterns and Practices community, I expect to just see some amazing things that are going to help you get your job done quicker, because the community is sharing so much really good stuff.
Very cool. Very cool.
All right. So, we've summarized and kind of outlined some of the major differences between SharePoint, both the SharePoint experiences. With these trade-offs, you want to be aware on how it will affect your users and organization. And I like something that David said earlier was before you create, plan, and that's a good route to go, is try to plan it out on how you're going to be utilizing the features that's available out there and how it's going to affect your users. And we know that Microsoft is investing heavily on providing updates to Modern, and that's sort of at the forefront of it all. Is Modern is going to keep updating over the next couple of years, and it's going to keep updating, and just got to be aware of what's happening on that end. At least on the branding side of things, from where it was 2 years ago to now, they're doing a lot. I know that initially there was only 1 color available for that theme. Now they're allowing for 3. Yeah, it's still 3, but it's still something that they're working on, and just kind of keep working on these little updates here and there. Something to keep an eye on, and then Classic is not going away, like Eric said, and they're not doing updates, but it's still there, and there's still the opportunity to create heavy branded portals just to whatever needs that you need for your organization.
Yeah. Okay. Trade-offs. This is another hour in and of itself. And let's try to get to some of the, there's so much we can talk about here. In general, I have to say that Modern is the way to go because it's a better system, but there's good reasons why you still might need to use a Classic experience. And so I get that. I would rather not see people move just to Classic because that just doesn't make sense to me. Just don't be scared of it because of these trade-offs that do in fact exist between Modern and Classic. I'm getting in really into the next slide, which is more into our hybrid stuff, but there's good reasons why you might need to work with a Modern and Classic. I think we're going to see most people move into Modern, and I would highly recommend you do all your work, or you're at least touching Modern a little bit. I expect to see 100% Modern projects all the way down to 5-10% Modern projects, where the other side is Classic. But I never expect to see a 100% Classic experience. for new solutions moving forward, unless, of course, you're still on SharePoint 2013 or SharePoint 2016, where you really can't even go to modern. You're really going to be hurting yourself. So if you're looking for some quick, easy answers, if you're thinking purely classic, I don't understand modern, I don't like it, the trade-offs that exist, I recommend you look to work around them. There are ways to get around a lot of the issues. You may not like them. You may say, well, we have these discussion portal, like our discussion boards, and we want to migrate them into modern. Okay, yeah, you can't. So if that's a deal killer, I get it. You'll have to stay with classic. You'll have to stay with that, and I get that. But can you move more of your components over into modern? Can you create new teams that are always going to be working with Microsoft Teams instead? And let your older discussions still exist in the classic experience, and as those start to get old, you just let them go. Gosh, so much here. So in interest in time, though, Kunal, let's keep moving forward. And I wish to say I can get to your questions. There are so many good questions. I'm going to have to get to these with Kunal and with Michael in our follow-up. I will do my best to answer everyone's questions. So please, I'm not trying to ignore you. So I did start with, I kind of have been hinting at hybrid. We've been talking about a little bit. There's a couple ways. I'm a big advocate of hybrid here. Now, there's lots of ways to look at hybrid. Hybrid, in the way I'm using it at the moment, is where you are combining classic experiences and modern experiences where needed. And I think this is a really good option when you say, hey, look, we've been building a portal, or we have something in mind, and it is a heavily customized portal with heavily customized search. All right, I get that. Build that in a publishing site, classic publishing site, use the technologies you know. But we haven't really mentioned this. You can build your web parts using SharePoint Framework and SharePoint Online, and you can include those SharePoint Framework web parts in classic sites. That's pretty cool. A caveat there. Out-of-the-box modern web parts cannot be added to a classic site, and you cannot add classic web parts to a modern site. But you can create custom SharePoint Framework web parts, and you can apply them to a publishing site. So build your publishing site, build your page layouts as needed, build your customizations using SharePoint Framework web parts as much as possible, if not fully. So as com sites maybe start to give you what you need, you can now move things over. So that's kind of one way of looking at hybrid. And of course, there's the hybrid of using on-prem and SharePoint Online as well. A good option there could be where you create you move most of your stuff to SharePoint Online. Maybe your communication site, your main portal is going to live over there on SharePoint Online, but maybe all of your team sites are going to use classic team site experiences on classic on-prem, maybe for regulation reasons. Maybe you can't move your team sites because your industry just doesn't allow that kind of data to live outside your environment. Totally cool. Totally understand it, and that option is still available as well. So some pretty cool things you can do with hybrid. I am a huge proponent of it. You can create a classic team site in SharePoint Online, and you can add modern pages to it. That's another sort of form of hybrid. So you can start to wean your users off of it if you have to. But if you're looking at a greenfield, which is really, you can start from scratch-ish, you're building a new portal, you're building a new communication collaboration solution, my recommendation has got to be start with modern. Don't really do everything you can to stay within that environment unless you have specific use cases where you had to work with a service, you had to work with a provider, your leadership said we must use this old thing. I get that. If you can't convince them to move to Teams, you can't convince them to move to Yammer, you can't convince them to move to Planner or whatever it is you need, or you don't have the budget to be able to rebuild custom solutions in SharePoint Framework, then I get it. You would stay in classic experiences for certain things. This is a whole nother hour topic too. I'd love to be able to discuss hybrid with people because there's so many things you can do. And a lot of our projects, we start out looking at hybrid, and then by the time we get into the design and development, we've realized that we can move the client over fully into modern if we have a few little, if we get rid of a few little few components that really aren't needed. They aren't important. Where the fully branded experience wasn't as important as having a good-looking branded experience, but we wanted to be on full modern. So you might find that as well, that by the time you get to the full planning stage, Microsoft will have already produced some of the updates that you're looking for.
And yeah, just kind of following up with that, and when you are starting out with your portal, always think modern first, like Eric said, and with that, just try to use classic where it's needed, and just look into try to plan it out. It's kind of like what I said before, is try to plan it before you create it and see where you can use modern and classic. If that's the way you need to go, then do that. And most of all, get the people that's going to be affected by these changes on board, so they're not writing, there's no cause of anger. Just get them on board, roll it out slowly, and get them to be using these features that's out there piece by piece, and over time people are going to come around and they'll like what's out there.
And I completely agree with that. That's what we're seeing with really any project we've worked on in the last 6 months, where the client wanted to start with classic. We worked with them through it, and we worked through the initial analysis, and we realized, hey, look, you could probably do some of these other things in this other way. So we're running out of time. It's been really, really good. I've got my 2 last bullet points I want to hit on for sure. Those of you who asked questions I didn't get to, we will get to them. Not during this call, unfortunately, but we will get you answers. Just watch our blog post. You'll be automatically notified. Okay. I love the answers. I love the questions. So thank you all so much for joining us. This has been such an outstanding, quick hour for me, at least. Okay, so if what I've been saying on modern just doesn't fit your model, I get it. I think that's where hybrid can really be a good option for you, where you can go ahead and look at doing as much as you can in modern and have specific classic features be provided in classic. Okay, now, but what I mean by that is you can't add a classic component into a modern site. Yeah, absolutely. But you could create a classic publishing site for search. You could create a classic publishing site for that particular CEO blog feature you needed to build, and you have page layouts over there. Because if you think about it, classic pages, modern pages are all still just items in basically a document library. They're a list library, and they have the content, the metadata stored there. So you can still tie content types to all this kind of stuff. So in the back end of SharePoint, your content's still stored the same, can be searched the same, can be referenced the same, can be retrieved the same, etc. So look to see how you can. If you don't like that options that I've given you, I think hybrid might be the true answer for you. Okay, now I really wanted to spend a lot more time on this last one, and it would have been a lot of fun. Microsoft has produced very strong Rails for us. They've given us areas to work within. You can actually swim outside those lines if you want to. And 2-3 months ago, I would have been heavily against you doing this. I've really come around, and the reason why is I've seen the interface of SharePoint solidify a little more. Some of the major components are becoming more solid, and some new techniques and ideas and concepts have been built, and I've been doing my best to really be at the forefront of this, that I feel more safe talking to people and saying, hey, look, if you need to do something that Microsoft maybe didn't recommend, just don't tell Microsoft I'm selling this. It's just between you and me. You should consider that being an option. And now let's take an easy use case, the header we've all been talking about here. You don't like the header. Okay. I'm going to get a little Debbie, so I just lost half of you. That's the way it goes, but I'll come back quickly. The header itself is a known component within the rendering engine, within what's produced in your browser. Using a SharePoint framework extension, something called an application customizer, you can actually build code, simple code, JavaScript, TypeScript, CSS code, that could target that header and can basically make it disappear, can make it not visible anymore. And you can now inject your own header there. This is not supported by Microsoft. I can't make that clear enough. They do not want you doing this, but you can. Okay, so you can now build your own header that had maybe your own navigation, your own search experience, your own icons. Maybe you just don't like the header, and you're going to use a application customizer header, the actual supported header. You just don't want the header that Microsoft provided to be visible. Okay, you can do that, and the benefits are, of course, you get the design you want. The big problem is, of course, if Microsoft makes a change, their header is going to appear again. It's going to show up, and that can make your site unusable or maybe not look good. So I'm telling you this on the header in particular. If you do it, you're going to want to build code that's defensive, such that if what you were doing to make the header disappear, the Microsoft header disappear, if they change something and it all of a sudden will appear, then you should probably not have your custom code actually execute. And there's ways to do it that's not too hard. So that if the header changes, you can now change it, go, oh, okay, cool. My header's not going to appear. We're totally out of time, but I'm going to finish this thought and then we'll let you all go. The other big caveat here is you need to pay attention to this. And if things change, you need to be ready to go back in your code, make the change necessary to make your change reappear. So if you're in an organization with 100,000 users, 60,000, 70,000 users, this might be a problem. Your senior leadership may say, hey, look, we cannot have a site that will change, period. We can't let Microsoft just change something and the header might change for us. That's too radical. Even though you'll fix it within a day or within an hour, we just can't be that liable for that. Then you should not, cannot, do not do what I'm saying. But for those of us who are willing to live a little more dangerously, and we have confidence that we can fix what happens, and I've seen this in 60,000 person organizations where they did this kind of customization, and I believe in it. I believe they did the right decision because they've got a team that's monitoring this and will pay attention, and if this ever changes, they'll be on top of it, and within a couple of business hours, it will all work. And even if the header was to reappear that Microsoft uses, it didn't break the design. It didn't break the site. It's just an extra header appeared. So totally things that you can do. You can definitely merge modern and classic. I'm going to end this with Kunal's first line here: modern first, classic only if you need it. So really, you can go to the thank you slide. That's to me the biggest advice I can give. It's time to move forward with modern. I understand you're going to have problems, and each of you could probably come to me and say, yes, but, and I could talk to you through those things and help you hopefully see some of that light. But that is the best recommendation I can give. It is evolving. I really appreciate everyone's time. I loved your questions. I'll get to them as quick as I can for you. Every single one of them. You can always reach out to us directly and say, hey, look, I had a question, follow up. Michael will make sure that this all gets directed to the right person, and we'll do our best to just answer these for you. So thank you all very much. Appreciate you all sticking around for an extra couple minutes. And Kunal?
Yeah, thank you. This was my first webinar, so thank you guys for being so attentive.
You did great.
It's been really fun.
Hey guys, thank you so much for being here today. We will we'll catch up with you guys soon. We will have more information about our next webinar coming up soon as well. And like Eric said before, I will have the recap up within the next week, so we will get your questions answered, and you all get an email about it when that stuff's ready to go. Thank you so much for being here today, guys. Have a great rest of your week. Thanks for joining us for our first session in 2019, and we'll hopefully see you again soon. Have a great day.
Bye, all.